All right. Good morning, everybody. Hope you all are having a fantastic Thursday afternoon. I'm just making sure that the stream is working. Had a few technical challenges this afternoon, but we are working our way through it. So let's see. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Looks like we are finally live. We're having a fun morning or fun afternoon at this point, trying to get everything up and running here. So, apologies for the delay getting started today, but we're going to have a good time. We're going to be on for about an hour, kind of talking about the brand new Xperia 1 Mark IV, which I have here in my hands, ready to answer any questions that y'all might have. And we did get quite a few questions through social media, which I'm going to pull up here momentarily. But if you're watching the stream right now, let me know in the chat where you are watching from. Also, let me know if you could hear me because I did set this up relatively quickly here. So hopefully, y'all can hear me okay. Let's see. Um, Pulling up my questions here, which, by the way, if you submitted your questions ahead of time, thank you for that. All right. So, and also, like I mentioned earlier, let me know where you are coming in from. So, Marcus, how's it going? He says he can hear me loud and clear. Awesome. Good to have you out there, buddy. How do you like the shirt, Marcus? Let me know. I know you appreciate the anime shirts. It's not really anime today, but we're going through it. All right. So, by the way, any questions that y'all have about the device, leave them as well in the chat because I'm going to be going through those as well. But I'm going through the questions that were asked on social media first, and then kind of working through that. So one of the questions that I had here was from looks like STE Channel was asking how long could it record in 4K before it overheats and stops recording. For me personally, and I'm here in Orlando, Florida, it is hot and it is humid. I've done several different shoots, shooting video with the device, both in 4K 24 and also shot native 4K 120, which is one of the really awesome features of this device. And I didn't run into any issues with overheating for the content that I was trying to shoot. So I think it's just one of those things where like it just depends on your shooting environment, shooting situations. What other apps do you have on the device that are also running? But I had a fresh device, didn't really have anything beyond just like Gmail and your typical apps that you would have when you start up a device. So I didn't run into any overheating issues. So, but like I said, that's one of those things where it just really depends on other factors that you might be using on your device. So very good question. Let's see. So some people are chiming in here. So we've got, and I'm sorry for the mispronunciations here, Sridhar, who is watching from India. How's it going? Saul from Georgia. Saludos. Sridhar was asking, what is the price point going to be? So I don't have any specific information in regards to pricing in India. However, there are some people from the Xperia team that are in the chat, so perhaps they can tackle that question. But I don't have any information in terms of pricing. So what I would say is, for the majority of these questions, I'm really going to be talking about my experience with the device, in terms of features, functionality, things like that. Pricing, I might not be able to get you too many answers, but let's see what we find here. But yeah, any other questions y'all have, leave them in the chat. So just going through this list of questions here. Here we go. So it looks like a lot of the questions were in regards to launches in India. Does the Xperia 1 Mark IV support FM radio when a wired headset is connected? This is a surprisingly useful feature, which I missed from the Xperia XZ2 Premium. So that's one of the things I haven't tested out. I don't know that this is compatible with FM radio. Again, maybe that's something that the Xperia team could comment on in the chat. I have not tried that, but I use different apps for FM radio as well. So I don't know if this doesn't work, there are other apps that you can use to basically connect to FM stations and listen to it that way. But I don't know how that differs from what was on the XZ2. Can the Video Pro app be made available to other Xperia phones like the Xperia 1 Mark II, I believe is what it says. So the Video Pro app, I believe, is just Xperia Pro I. And of course, the 1 Mark IV. And I believe Xperia Pro is also getting that update as well. So we'll confirm that as well. Let's see. How good is the new optical zoom? So the optical zoom is fantastic. I mean, that was probably one of the things that I would say was like one of the big kind of like mind-blowing moments, is the fact that you could have, you know, a smartphone that actually has a zoom capability in something that's like super thin. So for me, the optical zoom was fantastic. I mean, so here's the thing with zoom. I mean, I'm primarily by trade. Y'all watch my content here on Alpha Universe, or if you don't, I'm primarily a photographer. That's what I do by trade. So for me, all I know in my world of photography is optical zoom. For me, anything outside of optical zoom, unless it's like, you know, if I'm just kind of out and about during the day, just kind of doing random things, like, you know, if you see a UFO out there, like, hey, you're going to use whatever zoom it is that you've got on your phone. But for any kind of professional type situations where I'm trying to get a quality result, then yeah, I mean, the optical zoom is what you want. You want it to be as like clean and as crisp of an image as possible. So the optical zoom is very good on the Xperia 1 Mark IV, and it's something that I think is just one of its like standout features. You know, so if you're somebody who is big into mobile photography, this is great. You know, this is a great thing that they've added to this device. One of the other questions was, how good is the Xperia 1 Mark IV in low light video, especially? I know you have multi-frame processing going on with the new wider DR. Is it possible to bring that to low light videos for brighter videos? So I have yet to do anything in low light with the device. And I'm going to speak very generally on this, but typically when you're getting into low light situations, obviously there's things you could do in post-production to clean up low light video. So you can denoise a video, and that's not specific to this device. I mean, we could be talking Xperia Pro I, which has been my daily driver for the last few months. It could really be any video from any device, and you can run it through a denoising program, and it's going to end up being pretty clean. So as far as the Xperia 1 Mark IV, I haven't shot in low light, but keep in mind that when it comes to video, and especially when it comes to low light situations, you're going to end up having a small sensor that's capturing this data. So it's not going to be, I mean, it's going to be relatively clean for what it is, right? But if it depends on what your frame of reference is, right? So if you're talking about like this compared to an Alpha 7S III, it's going to be a pretty big difference because you have a much bigger sensor, bigger pixels. It's going to make a big difference when you're talking low light. Generally speaking, when you're using any small sensor devices, whether it's a smartphone or even, you know, I've got my little camera museum here, you know, some of these old little CyberShot cameras, they have small sensors as well. They love light. And if they have a lot of light, they're going to make some really fantastic looking images. If you're in really low light situations, it's still going to look really good because it's Got a lot of technology with HDR, with multi-frame processing that's going to make the video look really good. But for me personally, coming from like a very professional outlook, whether I'm shooting it on an Xperia device or I'm shooting it on, let's say, an FX3 or any of my other cameras, I'm going to run it through a denoising program, period. Because even if it is clean, it could always be cleaner, right? So, but it does do a fantastic job in low light, just to make that clear. Let's see. Going through the rest here, and actually, let me jump over to the chat really quick. Let's see. I want to upgrade from A6300 on gimbal work to A7C, but this phone looks like a great choice. Yeah, you know, what's really funny is this right here with like a small gimbal, you can capture amazing looking video. You know, obviously like A7C, you've got a full frame camera, you have the ability to add different lenses, but you know, realistically, like I know when I'm shooting videos, like right now I'm actually on a Alpha 7 IV with a 24 1.4 G Master lens. So most of what I'm shooting when I'm shooting video on location, I'm using a, you know, 24 millimeter focal length, which the Xperia 1 Mark IV has a 24 millimeter lens on the camera. So, you know, for me, I would be perfectly fine, you know, because I'm used to shooting at 24 mil. So it'd be perfectly fine taking like a really small gimbal and just going out there and just shooting video with it. It's a great option. I'm not going to say that it's going to take the place of an A7C, but I could see multiple scenarios where maybe I don't want to bring a bunch of equipment with me. And I've had a lot of those situations before, right? That's part of the reason why, as a professional, you have to have a lot of different options, because depending on the situation that you run into, there might be places where you don't want to bring like, you know, a big camera setup, right? Like I have in my studio, I have the FX9. I primarily just use my FX9 when I'm shooting here at my studio. I can't imagine, unless I'm with a big team, right? Big production team out on location, I don't see myself bringing my FX9 to go shoot on location because it's big, it attracts attention. But if you're a vlogger, if you're a content creator, if you're somebody that's out there that's like run and gun trying to pump out content, to me, your phone is always with you. So why not bring an Xperia 1 Mark IV with you? Bring a small gimbal. For example, I'm looking up on my shelf here. I've got the Zhiyun Crane M3 with the little cell phone bracket, like the little cell phone holder. And it's awesome. Like it's great. It's lightweight. I can carry this with my phone and, you know, whatever other things, my wallet, you know, and it doesn't take up too much room, which is pretty cool. Let's see. I look forward to combining it with my Sony Alpha 1, as well as doing vlogs and stock footage. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the big advantages as well to the Xperia 1 Mark IV. Being able to use this as an external monitor with one of your existing Alpha devices is super clutch. Having a 4K OLED display that's very bright. You could take it outdoors. You could use it as your bigger external monitor, which is super clutch. So yeah, absolutely. For vlogging, for any kind of content creation, this is a worthy addition. Let's see. Oh, that's a good question. So would you say this is the best on-phone camera? That is a really good question. So, and it's very subjective. I mean, if you're asking me personally, just like it is in photography, right? There isn't a like best camera as far as like the best period, end of story. It's the best for what your specific needs are. So for example, if you're looking for the best camera in a phone that has the ability to have like an optical zoom, then really this is your only option, right? If you find yourself shooting a lot between that 85 and 125 millimeter focal length, then yeah, absolutely. This is going to be the best camera with the best optical zoom that you can get. You do have, for example, on the Xperia Pro I, you've got that 24 millimeter lens that has that 1-inch sensor behind it, which gives you some really good looking, footage. So, you know, in my case, I shoot a lot of stuff at 24 mil. I love the video that's coming off the Xperia Pro I, which is why has been my daily driver for the last 6 months. But again, it just depends, right? Best is very subjective. I think it really depends on a variety of different factors and what you shoot. But I would say it's definitely one of the best that I've ever seen on a smartphone. And for those of you here who maybe are not familiar with me beyond just the content that I make for Alpha Universe, my background prior to becoming a professional photographer, like literally right before I became a pro photographer, I used to work in the cell phone industry. And so I'm very familiar with cell phones in general, phone technology, network technology, because I worked for a cell phone provider for several years. And so this is definitely like mind-blowing technology in terms of what the Xperia team has been able to do with these cameras on this phone. Not just the cameras, but really just across the board, what they've been able to do with this device has been like, if you would have told me 10 or 11 years ago that when I was working in the cell phone industry, that there would be a phone that would have this stuff, I'd be like, that's not possible. But yet here we are, you know, and with every device that Xperia has been rolling out, they've just been hitting it out of the park, which is exciting to see. Let's see, battery life in 4K, kind of talked about that. As I said, it depends. The situations that I've used it in based on like a fresh install, like freshly set up device, I was able to do everything that I needed to do. And, you know, you have wireless charging as well. So that's one of the big things. Like in my car, I have a wireless charging cradle. So usually when I get into the car, the first thing that I'm doing is I'm taking the device and I set it on the cradle, because obviously I want to be able to, you know, interact with the phone if I need to while I'm driving. But I do have the ability to charge the device. So, you know, that didn't become much of an issue. Let's see. How many Android updates will it get? That I do not know. Not sure. Hopefully they can chime in and answer some of those questions as well. So this is a great question. You're talking about the camera capability, but what about it as a phone? So as a phone, you know, it's kind of funny you mentioned that, because a lot of videos, they always kind of come at these reviews and the feedback from the perspective of like, you know, for me as a photographer, like when I made my video, I talk about the cameras because I'm most interested in that, because I'm a photographer and I love to, you know, I love photography. So I'm primarily interested in that. But as a device, I mean, you've got a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. So this is a big battery. The device itself is slim. The back of it is fantastic, that it doesn't really capture a lot of fingerprints, which was something that I really loved. The design of the device is amazing. The fingerprint reader works great. The wireless charging, for me, I will tell you, I've wanted wireless charging for a long time. And I would sound that drum every single time, because for me, I have wireless chargers everywhere. I have them in my car. I have them at home. And so what I love about the Xperia 1 Mark IV is when I am at work, I have a wireless charger on my desk. So as soon as I would get to my studio, I'd put this thing on the desk. It's charging. I've got a full charge for most of the day, unless I'm walking around and actively talking on it. When I go drive, I immediately put this into the cradle in my car. When I get home, obviously I don't have it on charge, so I'm fine. But when I go to bed, I have a wireless charger right next to my bed. And so I literally just throw it on the charger and it's good to go. So the wireless charging capability for me is like, it's awesome. Like that's one of the big day-to-day things that I think is really important. The speakers are improved on this device as well. So if we're talking taking and making phone calls, it's great. Viewing content on the display is amazing. So if you're going to be watching YouTube or, you know, Netflix or whatever content it is that you want to watch on the device, you have the capability of doing that, and you're doing it on a killer display. I mean, it's one of the best displays that I've used on a smartphone, period. And I think I said that in my video, and I'm going to echo that again. One of the best displays that you will see on a smartphone. If you have not had, which you will eventually have the opportunity to see these devices in person, you have to see it. Like it looks amazing. And I've seen a lot of displays over the years, obviously. Having said that, I've worked in the cell phone industry. It's amazing. So as a phone, it's great. I mean, it has all the things that I would want. I want a phone that can go all day. I want a phone that I can wirelessly charge. I want a phone that the display looks good, that I can see outdoors, that I can view content. Like for all of those things, it gets high praise. Let's see. Ooh, this is a good one. Can you please try the moment anamorphic lens on the Sony optical zoom lens? Yes, I can. Hang tight for one quick second. So hold on. I'm going to go off screen here for a second because I think I have my lens on this little cabinet here. So let me remove myself here. All right, I was incorrect on that one. Apparently, I don't have the anamorphic lens, but I will report back to you on my social media if that works, because I do have the lens here. So I'll try it on the optical because I'm curious to see. Like, I love using those. Now, if it doesn't work, just so you know, you could use a universal filter mount, which I want to say I made a video about this, potentially either on my own YouTube channel or perhaps on the Alpha Universe YouTube channel. But you could buy a filter adapter for the phone. And it's basically a 67 millimeter thread that goes over the top of all the cameras. And you could actually buy an anamorphic filter, which will give you the anamorphic flares, right? It's not going to give you the like squeezed look of the video, but if you're primarily doing it because you want to get those like anamorphic flares in the video, you could buy filters that would work for that. They just have to be 67. I want to say there is one mount that's like a 37 millimeter or somewhere in that ballpark. So that is an option as well. But I will report back because I know some other people have asked me about this as well. One of the other questions here, how does it compare with Xperia Pro? So if we're talking the original Xperia Pro, I would say, I mean, the Xperia Pro came out, what, 2 years ago? So, I mean, this is a huge difference in terms of everything. I mean, you have faster processor, you have better cameras. I mean, everything is updated and upgraded. So compared to the original Xperia Pro, I would say this is definitely like a fantastic option. If you're talking about between this and maybe say the Xperia Pro I, you know, that's kind of a different thing. You know, it just really depends on what your specific needs are for a phone. I could tell you for me, like I have my Xperia Pro I, I'm really happy with it. It looks great. If you're coming from, let's say, if you're like me and you already have the Xperia Pro I mean, I don't know. It's a toss up. If any of these features would be stuff that would be interesting to you, then obviously, you know, it's a personal decision. But I love my Pro I. So let's see. Just going through the rest of the chat questions here. To get even more cinematic footage, please try a 1.55x anamorphic on the zoom lens. That will look so cinematic. Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to try using some additional lenses. You'll see in the video that I did for Alpha Universe, I used that filter mount that I'm talking about, but I primarily use it for ND. And as a matter of fact, now that I think about it, the ND filter that I use to shoot video with the Xperia 1 Mark IV, it's a ND and a mist, so, and a pro mist filter, like in one. So it does kind of bloom out the highlights, kind of gives you kind of like a more filmic type of look, on top of giving you the ND properties, which is huge. So for those of you who are like, you're just into phones, you don't know what I'm talking about. When you use the Videography Pro or the Cinematography Pro app on this device, and you're shooting outdoors and you're shooting in any kind of like bright daylight conditions, because the aperture is like so wide open on most of these lenses, to give you that kind of shallow depth of field, it introduces a lot of light. And so you need to be able to control your exposure. And the only way to do that is to use something like a variable ND filter. So that's when you bring, you know, the little filter adapter, put it over there. And I think if you watch my video, you'll see there's a shot of me kind of holding the phone like this, and there's like a big lens on it. And that's basically what it is. And it just allows you to be able to shoot in bright daylight conditions. I use it for my Pro I, and it's the same one that I use for the Xperia 1 Mark IV. And it is very nice. Let's see. Mike was asking, is there any S-Log options? There isn't any specific S-Log options for shooting video. However, in Cinematography Pro, let me start this up here. I want to make sure I represent this correctly. Within the Cinematography Pro app, you have, let's see, use this folder. You do have some different looks that you could apply. So I'll put this up here to the screen so you can see you've got your Venice color science. And then these are some of the other ones. So opaque, bright, warm, strong, cool, soft monochrome. So you've got a couple of different looks that are kind of like already, you know, baked into the video. There isn't any S-Log options on this, either for Videography Pro or Cinematography Pro. Oh, this is a good question too. Scott Davies, Two Stones, says gimbal work. I'm a total novice on this front and was wondering if the gimbal app or Videography Pro is the way to go. So that's a really good question. I personally, like, I'm kind of like a sucker for gimbals. So any opportunities that I have to basically shoot video using a gimbal, that's usually the way that I would do it. But you do have, I'll put this up here on the screen. You do have stabilization right here. So you do have in-camera stabilization, but personally, I like using a gimbal because you will notice that, well, let me see, maybe you will, maybe you won't. Let's see. So with the stabilization on, you see kind of like it's going to be cropped in. If I go to, let's see if I can do this. Oh, hold on. It's going to be hard to demonstrate this, but basically when you use the stabilization that's built into the Videography Pro app, it actually punches in a little bit, and that's how it kind of keeps it stable. So for me personally, I turn the stabilization off on Videography Pro, and then I use the gimbal. And like I said, it doesn't have to be, the cool thing is because it's so small and it's lightweight, you don't have to have like a huge Ronin setup. You could use something that's really small and compact, and it's going to be perfect for that. So yeah, if it's me, I would use a gimbal because then I'm not losing, you know, any of my field of view in that video. Let's see, how big is the 1 Mark IV versus the 5 Mark III? That is a great question. Hang tight here. Let me see. I'm going to pull that up at the end of the stream because I don't want to keep getting up and then people come and think I'm not here. So I will double check. I don't think that it's going to be very comparable in size to the Xperia 1 Mark III versus the 5 Mark III. It's just a little bit bigger. I mean, if you're trying to get the smallest possible phone, then you probably want to go with the 5 Mark III. But I will show you on screen. I'll go grab the phone because I do have it in my drawer. Let's see. Does this work with the Sony vlogging accessories? So that is a great question. It does. I actually have the question is in regards to these accessories. So this is the Sony monitor, basically, and their little phone holder here connects via magnets, which is really nice. And I'll actually just show you since I've got it here. It's the fun part of having all these toys here available to me at the studio. So we'll plug that in. Go USB-C. And this isn't the cable that came with the monitor. Fortunately, I have misplaced that, but that's okay. So you can see I just plug it in through USB or USB-C. And then as soon as I plug it in, it actually shows me on the phone, do you want to connect the monitor? And you just hit OK. And then now I have the ability to basically just, you know, vlog using this device, which is pretty sweet. So yes, it does work, and it's super easy to set up. I think that's one of the big things is, you know, when you're vlogging and you're out on location, you never know when something might happen. And so having the ability to really quickly just like turn on the device, plug in the monitor through USB-C, and it immediately powers up. You don't have to turn on the monitor. I mean, I just leave mine on. So I just plug it in and it's ready to go within seconds, which is really helpful. So I don't want to kill the battery here. Let's take this thing out. But yes, it does work. Let's see. Can you tell us the display? Display on this is 4K HDR OLED display, 50% brighter than the original, or the Xperia 1 Mark III. Fantastic 21:9 aspect ratio, just fantastic display. Being my first Xperia, you recommend this or the Pro I? Again, you know, it's really tough. And I hate to use this as my answer, but it depends, you know, it depends on what your priorities are. Like, depends on what you're doing or what you expect out of your phone. In many ways, I could see where the Xperia 1 Mark IV would be kind of like a more all-around option for just day-to-day cell phone use. The Xperia 1 Mark IV would be a great option, you know, and I'm thinking primarily because of that wireless charging, having the big battery, having that optical zoom, having the ability to live stream currently, even though I know the Pro I is going to get that soon. But yeah, I mean, there's just like some really great features on the 1 Mark IV that just make it a really good all-around camera or all-around phone. But the Xperia Pro I is a great device as well. So it just really depends on what your specific priorities and what your expectations are out of a device. But I would say if I was looking at the specs and the features on paper, and let's say I'm not looking at it as far as like for vlogging specifically or you know, taking like professional style photos, it's still capable of doing all of that. So I'd be perfectly fine with an Xperia 1 Mark IV. But, you know, again, it just really depends on what your needs are. Let's see. How does the sensor on the 1 Mark IV differ from the one on the Pro I? Well, the biggest difference is going to be that you have 12 megapixel sensors for all of the lenses, the 3 on the front, or sorry, the 3 on the back and the 1 on the front. The Xperia Pro I basically has the 1-inch sensor behind the 24 millimeter lens, and then you have different size sensors for the other lenses, including the front-facing camera. So you're going to get more kind of like consistent quality as far as your image quality is concerned on the Xperia 1 Mark IV versus the Pro I. But, you know, obviously the Pro I has that 24 mil lens with the bigger sensor. So if you're specifically using that, then yeah, that's going to be the bigger difference. Let's see. I see that I see that having a camera shutter button is a nice thing, but does it introduce any camera shake while pressing it? What is your experience regarding this? So that's a really good question. When you're taking photos, especially, you know, for somebody like myself. Like I'm used to basically holding my camera and pushing this halfway down to take a photo. Um, I don't notice any kind of like shake or anything like that when I'm taking photographs. I'm always kind of like by extension of being a photographer, like I pose and I hold my camera in a certain way. So like anytime I'm taking a photo, whether I'm doing it with a professional camera or my own smartphone, I always have like my elbows tucked. You know, I'm holding this nice and steady. You push it halfway down. It does have amazing tracking. So whether or not I'm taking a photo of a still thing or a moving thing, it works fantastic. But basically just holding in tight, pushing halfway down to acquire focus and fire. So I think in terms of just overall functionality, it's much better using that shutter button than it is doing it the hold it with one hand, which is very unsteady, and then doing this where you're just tapping on the screen, you know, or tapping to take the photo. This causes more impact and shake than this. This is like minimal. So yeah, and I would say this is definitely much better. It doesn't introduce any camera shake. Keep this in mind. You have the ability, especially with the Photography Pro app, to adjust your shutter speeds. So if you have a high enough shutter speed, it's going to negate all of the camera shake that might be introduced anyway. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Let's see. So, all right, Ginger Dad, I have a question. Is the phone aimed more for a person who wants to play around a bit more with pics? Obviously, Apple and Samsung nailed the digital photos at push button level. So, you know, that's one of those things where like this does that. Like you can use the photography app and just use it on basic mode, and it does a great job at just literally point your camera at something and push the button and take a photo. So it does a great job at doing that. I think between this and other devices that I've used, I feel like the colors are a lot more natural. You know, and for me as a photographer, that's kind of what I want. I don't want colors that are like overly crazy and overly saturated, because I feel like that's not true to life, you know, and then it makes the photos look like they're not representing what I actually saw in person. Most of the time, that's not good. So it definitely has the ability, if you are that type of person that you want to do more with your photos and you want to tinker and play around with it more. You know, you could use the Photography Pro app and you could literally adjust everything. I don't know if I've shown this yet, but if I go into the app, right? So you've got the basic mode, which basically is like any other camera app. It does everything for you. But if you go up here, you could adjust to manual settings. So as you mentioned, it could be, you know, as simple or as complex as you want it to be. So you could see here that I could choose the lens that I'm using, you know, my autofocus modes, my drive modes, adjusting ISO, metering modes, you know, eye autofocus, whether you want your flash on or off. Your shutter speed is up here, so I could adjust my shutter speeds, you know, ISO values. So you could use this as like a professional, you know, quality or a professional style camera if you wanted to, or, you know, you could just you just go here to the old tried and true, or you can go to auto, you know, or you could just go to basic mode, right? So, and then it's just super easy. Just tap the button, take the photo. So any amount of effort that you want to exert in taking a photograph, you could totally do that. Let's see. Does it have HDMI in? It does not. It has a, oh, you're not going to be able to see there. Let's see. There it goes. USB-C. Had to cover my face because the camera has eye autofocus engaged. So no HDMI in. If you need that, you're looking at the Xperia Pro, the original. Is there stabilization in the blogging accessory kit? There isn't any kind of like stabilization on this vlogging handle, but there is stabilization within the Videography Pro app if you decided to use it that way. So, but the handle itself doesn't have any kind of stabilization. It has old school stabilization, which would be you holding it very tightly. Very good question, though. Let's see. A lot of comments. Hello from South Africa. Someone says that t-shirt is absolutely baller. Thank you. I appreciate that. I always break out my my best shirts for the Alpha Universe audience. So I appreciate that. Let's see. Just going through the chat here. Moves so quickly. Oh, here we go. So I think Scott Davis' question was about comparing the native camera app versus gimbal camera app and which is better to use. I'm not certain what the gimbal camera app is that's being referred to. But regardless, if it just reading into that, right? If we're talking an app stabilizing footage versus a external mechanical device stabilizing footage, no matter how you slice it, if it's doing it within an app, then it's going to punch into the footage, which is not a bad thing. If you're in a pinch and you want to have stable footage and you just have your phone with you, it's going to do a fantastic job of that. I personally, if I'm doing anything professional, anything that I'm going to be posting to my own YouTube channel, I'm a sucker. Like, I make things more complicated than they need to be, but I also want it to look as good as humanly possible. So I personally would like using the gimbal, like an actual gimbal for stabilizing my footage, whether I'm using a phone or a big camera or an alpha camera, like it really doesn't matter. That's kind of what I choose to use. But if you are just doing this as like an everyday thing, you want to minimize your gear that you have to bring with you, then sure, you could use the stabilization that's within this app or really any other app. I assume it's going to work in a very similar way. But I still prefer having an actual gimbal. So let's see. Can I have a SIM, eSIM, and micro SD simultaneously? I'm not 100% sure what an eSIM is, but you can have, and I'll just pull this out here. What's really nice with the Xperia 1 Mark IV is that the tray, you don't need any kind of tools to like pop it out. So the tray itself, you've got on one side, you could put your SIM, and on the other side, you could put an SD card. So you could have both of those on there. As far as an eSIM, I'm not 100% sure what that is or why you would need it. So let me know in the comments. Let's see. Can you comment on? This one says, can you comment on how picture quality on Sony phones improve when moving from pre-production units to production units? I've used a bunch of pre-production units, obviously, as I create content for Alpha Universe and also for my own YouTube channel, doing reviews. I don't see the picture quality making a tremendous difference. Usually when I get the devices, for the most part, they look pretty good. But there are occasions where, like, as we're testing these devices, that we'll say, oh, you know, I just noticed that this would happen. And usually by the time it goes out, if there is any kind of issues like that, they end up getting taken care of. So I haven't noticed, as far as like image quality being that big of a difference. Usually ends up looking really good either way. Let's see. So this is a good question. So is it possible to change camera while recording video? For example, switching from wide to ultra wide. So let's give that a test. So if you're using your, this is the Videography Pro app. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and just hit record. Oh, hold on, double tapped it. There we go. So you're going to notice here, you have your zoom. So I can go and, whoa, look at that. We're really close. 375 millimeters, or I can go and go all the way back. Okay. So you have a seamless zoom from 16 millimeters to 375 millimeters. I'm going to stop recording. Nobody wants to see that video in real life, but yeah, so I think that answers the question. You can basically seamlessly zoom from one focal length to the other, which is awesome, by the way. A lot of other cameras, if you try shooting video, there's like a hard step from like one lens to the next. So like when it switches from, you know, your ultra wide to your medium telephoto to maybe a telephoto lens, it stops and you see that like transition in the video. This is the only one that I know of that I can think of at the moment that has it where it seamlessly zooms from 16 to 375 millimeters, which is pretty cool. I would like to see how it works as an external monitor for Sony supported mirrorless camera. So it's super simple, honestly. I can't show you because I've got the camera that I'm using right now as my Sony camera. But essentially, I've used it a number of times already. You take your USB-C cable, you plug it into your device. As soon as you turn on the Alpha 7 IV, for example, as soon as you plug in the phone, it's going to ask you what kind of connection you have. You select USB streaming, your external monitor app, you'll turn that on, and it just works. Like it's seconds, literally. Plug it in, hit yes on the camera, and it's ready to go. So it's very, very simple, very easy to use, and it looks fantastic because you have this small, you know, high quality 4K OLED display that you're using as your external monitor. And you also have the ability to live stream from the app, which is like my brain was spinning when they mentioned that this was one of the features in the device, because I'm sitting here thinking as a content creator, I could be out somewhere, right? I could be out at a park or some location out in the city somewhere, doing a photo shoot, and I could actually have like an additional camera, give it to my video guy, have him connect the phone to that camera, and then we can live stream the footage that's coming from my Alpha camera, you know, with a proper video lens, like quality type of footage that I'm able to capture using that external monitor app. So a lot of flexibility to do that. Just going through the questions here. Would it take RAW when zoom all the way in? I don't see why it wouldn't. Let's see. I'm going to assume you're talking about stills since you're talking RAW. So let's go to manual here. Switch this over to RAW. And manual exposure. Okay. Yeah. So right now you see it's, hold on, there it goes, set to RAW. And this is using that optical zoom. So I assume that's the question you're asking. And if it is, the answer is yes. That's a separate thing. So yes. Are there settings in manual mode that are not offered in manual/pro modes from competitors like Samsung? That's a good question. So the pro modes that I've used from other brands typically don't have the same amount of like things that you can adjust. So you have to keep in mind that, you know, Xperia partnering up with the Alpha folks, a lot of this is similar to what you're going to see on a on like an Alpha series camera. So you're going to have the ability, for example, to select your drive mode, to select your focusing mode, to select if you want to do like center or wide area focus. These are features that, as far as I could remember, I don't remember seeing other devices that give you this level of customization within the camera app. You would have to confirm that. You'd have to get one to test it. But, you know, being able to select your metering modes, you know, again, this is all stuff that you would have in an Alpha series camera. So, you know, if you have one of those already and you're familiar with it, you're going to have a lot of those same features and capabilities. Obviously, your white balance options are going to be in there as well, including being able to add or to customize your white balance, which is very helpful. Yeah, your autofocus, if you're going to have your eye autofocus engaged. And then also your dynamic range optimizer. So these are all things that are within, you know, Sony Alpha cameras that you have the ability to use on your Xperia 1 Mark IV. From what I remember from having like old like Samsung Note devices, I don't remember having that level of customization within the Pro mode, which is why oftentimes you would end up having to get a third-party app to be able to get some of these features. And they still don't have all the features. So, is there a time-lapse function for 4K video export or taking time lapses with raw photos? I don't believe so, but let's see before I say that. Let's see, go into menus and drive mode. So let's see, metering modes, face IAF. I don't believe so. Definitely not for shooting stills. I'll have to report back on that if there is. I don't believe so. As far as for the video side of things, you do have, let's go back to, yeah, so on the video side of things, I don't believe so, because you've got your, basically here are your video options, right? So you got your 23.98, 25, 29, 60, and 120 frames a second. So I don't believe so, but I will have to report back because it's possible that there might be some other app that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head that might be able to allow you to do that. Is it worth it to upgrade to this if you currently own a Pro Eye? You know, again, like I was saying earlier, it depends. Depends on what your priorities are and what your needs are. There's a lot of things about the 1 Mark IV that I think make it like a great upgrade. And I'm thinking specifically like a bigger battery, newer, faster processor, you know, the wireless charging capabilities, having that true optical zoom. So there's a lot of like things to like about the Xperia 1 Mark IV. I think it just really depends on what your priorities are. It's really hard to answer that question because I'm not sure how you use your device and what you prioritize. So depends. Let's see. Okay, I see. So DJI and Zhiyun have their own camera apps in the Play Store that enable the buttons on the gimbal. And I'm talking about the Smooth line from Zhiyun and DJI Mobile. I have not tried that, but I will try that and I will report back. Not 100% sure. Usually when I use my gimbals with the device, I'm still controlling everything through that app. So not 100% sure. All right, so eSIM is a virtual SIM that doesn't need the physical one, so having it allows you to have a different cell phone number and also a micro SD. That's pretty slick. I've not tried that and I've not had a need for it, so cannot say one way or the other. Is the variable telephoto a two-stop lens or a gradually shifting lens? Yeah, so it is a true optical telephoto lens. So I think I showed this here a second ago. It's not stepping from uh, 85 to the 125. It is a true optical zoom. So I'll just show you that here again. So if I select on the menu here, I've got 85 to 125. And if I use my volume, you can see I can go from 85 to 125. And it's a seamless zoom because it's optical. It's just like if you had, 85 to 125 millimeter lens and you twist the barrel, you have a true optical zoom. So it's different than the Xperia 1 Mark III. And it's basically different than any other smartphone out there because it's the world's first. So very good question. Let's see. So there's a question here in regards to the Pro I battery life and what the experience is with the 1 Mark IV. So I might be a little bit different on this. I haven't had any issues with battery life with my Pro I. But I kind of talked about how I use my device on a day-to-day basis. I'm typically using my Pro I. I'll be charging it when I'm on my way to work. I charge it when I'm sitting at my desk at work, unless I'm actively doing a photo shoot or something like that, which might be 4 or 5 hours. But then I'm charging it on the way back home. I mean, I rarely, unless I'm going out for the day where I'm just like completely away from, civilization for a while, I can get through a full day on the Pro I without too much of an issue. So the 1 Mark IV has great battery life. It's got a bigger battery, so you'll be able to get a full day and possibly then some. I haven't tried to go to see like torture test the battery to see like, can I make it into the following morning? Because again, it just depends. If you've got a bunch of apps turned on, if you're doing a bunch of stuff when the device is turned on, that could drain the battery faster. So it's just always going to be different. Battery life is one of those things where it's like, you could have the big battery and that's going to help you overall. But if we're talking like, it's like getting from one place to another. Like for one person, it might take a little while. For one person, you can get there super fast. It just depends. Are you going on a bike? Are you going in a car? Are you in a rocket ship? All of these things are going to be factors. When it comes to battery life, you run into the same things. Are you running a bunch of apps all day long that's running in the background that's draining the battery? Obviously on the Xperia 1 Mark IV that I have it with like, I've only had it for a few weeks at this point. So I don't have a bunch of stuff running in the background. So the battery does really well. I would imagine maybe after a year of usage, when I've got a bunch of apps and maybe some that I probably should uninstall because they're running in the background, that could affect the battery life. So I always tell people, and I said this even when I worked back in like my old cell phone days working at, a cell phone provider, I would tell people this all the time as well. If you have any kind of battery life issues on any device that you own, you really need to make sure that you're looking to make sure that your apps are not draining your battery, working in the background, doing stuff that is unimportant, because that happens often. Let's see. I'll take a few more questions here because we're almost at my hour here. Let's see. Just scrolling back up here. I saw a demo of the live stream feature via Alpha Camera. It was cool. Yes. So I did one yesterday, actually, on my own YouTube channel, using the Xperia 1 Mark IV as my device to connect to the internet. And then I live streamed using the Alpha 7 Mark IV with the 24 1.4 G Master, and it was awesome. Let's see. Is Sony's 3.5 millimeter headphone jack now able to record audio from a Sony wireless microphone, the W2BT? It also worked with a USB-C adapter on the older Xperias. I haven't tested that. But what I have tested is using the vlogging kit, the monitor. Cover my eyes here for a sec. That red circle that you see there, you have the ability to connect a microphone to getting angles here is funny. So this little red thing here, you can connect a microphone to that. I've connected all kinds of microphones to this, and I've been able to get it to work properly. Going through the headphone jack, I think it's going to depend on the cable that you have. You have to obviously have the right cables to be able to do that. But I don't have the W2BT here, but I will test that and I will find out. Why are the brands on the back of the phone covered in black adhesive? That's how they send it to me. They usually are kind of covered up. I have two devices here. This one I peeled it off. But when we get these phones as like, whatchamacallit, when we get them as, I'll just go ahead and peel that off here. When we get these as like models that we can review and test out, they usually are covered up because if anybody opens this up during transit, you know, it becomes an issue. Yeah, somebody says it's done on pre-production models. That is correct. Cool. All right. Well, actually, it looks like we're a little over on the hour. So any questions? I'm going to go back through these questions. There's probably some content here that could kind of like be its own separate video. So I am going to be doing some videos covering some of the like most asked questions about this device and hopefully posting that up on Alpha Universe here pretty soon. So any questions you have, please leave them in the chat. You can leave them on the most recent video where we talk about the Xperia 1 Mark IV as well. And I will do my best to try to come back and make some videos talking about that. But I do want to say thank you all so much for joining me on the live stream today. And, you know, hopefully we'll be able to do more of these here in the future now that we've worked through some of the technical challenges of getting these live streams up and running. I'm hoping to be able to do these a little bit more frequently. But again, thank you all so much for spending the afternoon. Make sure that you subscribe. If you're here on the Alpha Universe channel and you haven't subscribed, please make sure that you subscribe, turn on notifications, because we release new videos here literally all the time. So make sure you do that. If you want to see more of me shooting with this, whether it's video, shooting stills with it, let me know in the comments. I'll make sure that I do that as well. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me for today's broadcast. And we have another one coming up towards the end of this month, which we'll announce here soon, and we'll link to that soon. That one you don't want to miss because that one's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, hope you guys all have a fantastic Thursday, and I will see you all later.